Education either functions as an instrument which is used to facilitate integration of the younger generation into the logic of the present system and bring about conformity, or it becomes the practice of freedom, the means by which men and women deal critically and creatively with reality and discover how to participate in the transformation of their world. That was said by Paulo Freire.
In the 21st century, the world is experiencing difficult times. No matter how one chooses to look at things or how much of a positive attitude one tries to adopt, there is still a great deal of uncertainty amongst most people in regards to the future, and many of those who have taken the time to investigate and who are aware of such things see the situation as hopeless, and many feel powerless in the face of the New World Order Leviathan that is ever more quickly engulfing our civilization. Yet the reality is that people are not powerless at all. In fact, quite the opposite is true, for there is a very simple and effective way to stop the New World Order in its tracks. Let's be honest about it. The system that we live under is corrupt. It's rotten to the core. It's about self-service, and it's run by psychopaths and criminals, and everyone knows it. And they get away with it, and the world continues along in this dysfunctional manner, simply because we let it continue. So stop going along with it. Understand that the way to bring about real change in the world is through non-compliance to the system. And many ask, what is non-compliance? Does this mean I should quit my job and burn all my money? And the answer to any questions such as these is no, of course not. Non-compliance is about doing the right thing. It's about disconnecting yourself from the system, being responsible for your thoughts, your actions and your intentions, and it lies very much in realizing your own potential. Do realize your connection to others and think humanitarianly rather than economically. Don't base your life on the collection of useless trinkets or on social status. Do what is right in your heart. And doing what is right, understanding whether what you are doing is the right thing or not, is not something you have to decide. It's something that you already know in your heart if you would just look and be honest with yourself. If you are doing something that you need to justify to yourself with inner dialogue, then chances are that you're doing the wrong thing and are simply trying to talk yourself into allowing it. You know this. Knowledge of it is within your heart. You just have to look and you will find it. Understand how the energy works. Be aware of the energy you are drawing into yourself, of what you are manifesting with that energy, and what type of energy you are contributing back to the energy supply for others to draw upon. This is truly how it works. Realize your potential as a human being. Forget the imaginary restraints that have been placed before you by the academic system and the limitations you are told exist by science and religious teachings, and look at the whole spectrum. Because the fact is that each of these institutions functions only to compartmentalize knowledge. Each exists for the very purpose of limiting the scope of your understanding by locking you into a contained and restrictive paradigm. And until people begin to look beyond such imposed limitations, open their minds and make the connections between religion and science, they are never going to make the connections to themselves, to this reality, and to the Creator that men have called God. But to do this, and to gain a real understanding, requires both acceptance and self-responsibility. It requires that people act in a proactive manner. There are many who find such things difficult, those who would prefer someone else to come and save them. Yet such people desire the impossible, for they desire to be delivered into salvation and utopia without ever understanding the true nature of their world or even themselves. And this is very often due to the limitations of an imposed belief system. Now you can talk to those who embrace religion. You can sit them down and you can talk to them about God and about Satan, and they will converse with you eagerly, and they all very much believe in such things. But as soon as you put things like science, galactic laws, numerology or astrotheology into the equation, many just shut off. They say it's God's will, and they sit back and they wait for Armageddon. And some will even go so far as to say the pursuit of such higher understandings is demonic. And though on a different level, it's the same with many scientists. They understand the mechanics of it all, But many refuse to add spirituality into the picture and only adhere to laws that can be applied on a mechanical level. Both approaches are inherently flawed because neither will consider the arguments of the other, and both refuse to take into account, allow for, and even embrace the true nature of feelings and emotions. Yet feeling and emotion is the key to it all. Feeling and emotion is the language that is used to create and to mold reality. Feeling and emotion is the true nature of prayer, and it is also the language by which man may communicate with the Creator. What is the true nature of that divine entity that man has named God? The Creator is the intelligence that underlies all, the fabric that permeates all realities. The Creator exists as one, a single consciousness that is in essence a duality, both male and female, the Alpha and the Omega. This is why in every religious text in which the Creator speaks, it is in the plural. This is the nature of the divine matrix, connects all things, the consciousness of which we are all expressions. As self-awareness grows and realization of one's connection to this consciousness awakens within each person, institutionalized religions seek to externalize this force and suggest that God is something external from man, a benefactor that is looking down on us. Many so-called New Age religions attempt to internalize it and suggest that God is yourself, that God lies within. But both of these understandings are erroneous. Every being in creation, both you and I and every other person in this reality, is an eternal living soul expression of God, of the consciousness of the Alpha and Omega, just as every soul is male-female in nature. Yet despite this, our world, our species and our consciousness is today rampant with division and distrust that is wholly illusionary and has been deliberately engineered into being. The manufactured creation of an institutionalized society. This has been going on for a very long time, and it has reached extreme proportions over the last century. During this time, man as a species has been shifted so far from his center and so far away from true reality that we have almost completely lost our humanity. We have been trained to be totally dependent upon the system. We have been robbed of our will, of our self-esteem and our independence. We have been trained to believe whatever the TV tells us and to think that image, social status and the collecting of meaningless trinkets is the meaning of life. This last fact alone has placed mankind in the most vulnerable position of our entire recorded history. For at this point in time, we are, almost each and every one of us, completely dependent upon a corrupt corporate apparatus for our survival, an apparatus that places profits before people. It has nothing at all to do with the true nature of man, of our place upon and relationship to this earth or to each other.
This is Trevor Coppola for Anthony J. Hilder. I'm with Deborah Tavares, and we're going to discuss a few topics here.
Thank you so much for the interview. I appreciate the opportunity. One of the things that we want to talk about is what we were discussing a little bit ago, and that is the significance of this NASA war document that was found on the NASA website, and the need to urgently get this out in front of as many people as possible because of the content of this document.
So was this document available to everyone, or this was on their actual website and someone found it?
That is correct. It was on the NASA website, and it was a document that actually is a PowerPoint presentation by Dennis Bushnell, the chief NASA scientist at the Langley Center. And it was presented in 2001, July of 2001, just a few months before 9/11. And what brought my attention to it and immediately rang some uncomfortable realizations was when we first came across it. It says on the website, Future Strategic Issues, Future Warfare circa 2025. And as I decided to just flip through it quickly to see what it was about, I was a little stunned on page 4. It said, the presentation is based in all cases upon existing data, trends, analysis technologies, no pixie dust. And the entire premise of the document, or the PowerPoint, is about robots, cyborgs, and humans. So I immediately saw a conflict between future and now. And I thought, what are they covering up? Because that was a definite cover-up. And then I started to continue looking through the document with shock.
So who wrote this NASA document, and was this intentional? Did they want the public to see this, do you think? Or?
Well, again, the most wealthy, rich men on the face of the planet always telegraph everything that they're going to do. So the fact that it was on the NASA website, it was certainly available to the public, but did they see it? Obviously not. Because had they looked at this document, you would know about it right now. And we don't. And that's the purpose of this discussion, is for people to know about this document. Again, the conflict between the future and the fact that they said it was a current reality in 2001 of July when this was actually presented. And what it said, which was quite shocking, on page 93, it said, capture, torture Americans in living color on prime time. And that is an unbelievable statement. Then it's followed up by saying terror attacks within the continental United States using binary biologicals take down critical infrastructure. They are going to use an EMP, which is an electromagnetic pulse. They're going to use radiation frequencies against our brains, etc., and conduct serious psy-war and collateral damage and exploitation. On this same page 93, they say exploit CNN syndrome. Now, CNN, of course, is the network, the news media network, propaganda machine, and was set up by the CIA. You can watch the movie called Psy-War on stopthecrime.net for all the background information on CNN. Very, very interesting information. Then you go on and you read that on page 66, they say increasingly critical are human limitations and human downsides. Humans are too large, humans are too heavy, too tender, humans are too slow, both physically and mentally, and we require huge logistical trains, meaning we cost way too much money to maintain, and humans have rapidly decreasing to negative value. Can you even believe this? I mean, you're hearing this, and it's got to be rather shocking coming off of a NASA website, particularly when some of the agencies that are involved are the U.S. Air Force, DARPA, the CIA, the FBI, Southern Command, Atlantic Command, Australian Department of Defense, and other agencies. This is the corporation's agencies. We are USA Inc. We're no longer under a constitution as proclaimed in the Iron Mountain Report, which everyone should read. You will see how the stealth and deceptive, incrementally positioned attacks upon the Constitution have rendered us now a corporation. And we no longer have a legitimate government. We are being controlled by corporations and banks that are posing as a legitimate government, and they're not. We wouldn't have a legitimate government with the war machine stating what they were going to do on the continental United States to all the people. And this is not just in the United States. This is a global planned attack and assault with technologies beyond most people's comprehension. And they don't realize that the beam weapons, for example, on page 45, Beam weapons increasingly prevalent. This is how they're going to attack. They talk also about, on page 9, this is very interesting and horrifying. Humans have taken over and vastly shortened evolution. They're going to direct evolution. They believe, the bankers, the global elites, believe that they have accomplished immortality. And they're doing that, again, keeping in mind that this entire document is about robots, cyborgs, and humans. They've already mapped our brains. We've just recently heard that they can transfer a human brain into machinery. So whenever they tell us that this is a new scientific discovery, we know it's been decades and decades prior to us ever finding out about these things. And they also talk about microdust as a weapon. They say that this micron-sized mechanized dust, which is distributed as an aerosol and inhaled into the lungs, the dust mechanically bores into the lung tissue and executes various pathological missions. They say it's a completely new type of warfare, and it is legal. It's legal. This is what they're going to do to all the humans on the face of this planet. It's all legal. And then they talk about how the use of frequencies will be used in warfare. And we know, for example, the smart meters that are being deployed around the globe, the replacement of our electric meters, which will also and does include the replacement of all of our gas meters and our water meters as well, and will be connected to our food supply when they collapse the currency and they issue energy allowances, and that will all be controlled through the metering system. But they talk about the use of low frequencies, microwave frequencies, and they mention in this NASA document the U.S. Army report. It's about a 20-page Army document that talks about the use of frequencies to target the enemy. We're the enemy. And they say 100% of the human population will be affected by these frequencies. Some will be the canaries in the coal mine, which is a term that they've been using as people have been dropping like flies. People are experiencing all kinds of health maladies. Generally, it starts with ringing of the ears, heart palpitations, skin rashes, inability to sleep through the night. And what they're doing is they're jamming our immune systems with these frequencies.
So how do the elite shield themselves from their own weapons?
Well, that's a really good question. And some of the information that we've come across is, of course, they have methods far ahead of anything that we have available to ourselves, such as cancer cures. They don't get cancer. There's chip mechanisms that we understand can fend off certain frequency attacks. We also know that they're interested in transhumanism. So much of what they're doing globally, they're interested in. And to what extent they're affected by all of the chemtrails and all of the nanofibers that are being dropped, which is phase 1 of the first protocol. It all lines up. Everything lines up. You connect the dots. You see the NASA war document. Not only does it talk about the effects of frequencies and how it will be used, they acknowledge that it will interfere with our performance, that it will cause seizures. They acknowledge this in this document. It is no longer a debate. We don't need any more scientists or doctors saying people are getting sick. This is the intention. So we have to stop looking for more verifiable proof that people are becoming sick. This is the goal. This is the absolute goal. It's incarceration, it is enslavement, and it is depopulation, and it is massive mind control. The frequencies have multiple purposes.
What do you think the solution is to all of this multi-level attack that's been going on for a very long time?
Well, I think the solution is that people need to become educated as rapidly as possible. This is their war plan. This is the war plan. So we have to go to the war plan.
As a talk show in Texas, I think, and it's heard in communities around the United States. And he was talking about the Bohemian Grove Club, as if that's where it all happens. That's where all the decisions are made. There are thousands of people go there, and there's some kind of a ceremony surrounding an owl and all that. Have you followed this at all?
Yes, I have, even though the show is on past my bedtime. But Alex Jones has been talking about this for quite a while. The Bohemian Grove, of course, is a privately owned redwood grove up in Sonoma County, north of San Francisco, where every summer there is a get-together of the wealthy and well-placed, all male, who get together for general cavorting, socializing, lectures, symposia, and so on, in an atmosphere that is completely removed from public scrutiny. Alex Jones and some others have suggested for a long time that there are all sorts of nefarious rituals that go on, human sacrifices that were being committed by the elite who attend these gatherings.
A lot of things people feel are organized behind the scenes with the Bilderbergers, the Trilateral Commission, the Council on Foreign Relations, the Masons. You can keep going down the list, and the Illuminati, One World Government, New World Order, Skull and Bones. You've got more information on that than I do, so talk to our guest about that, and we'll try to sort it out. Define Illuminati.
The Illuminati were a small quasi-Masonic group founded in Central Europe in 1776.
There was a surprising development in the summer of 2005. A Bohemian Grove employee decided to videotape some of the activities in the Grove and to give us the footage. The footage was shot on a tiny digital camera, so the quality isn't the best, but the images are powerful. The individual that gave us this footage asked that we not release their name. Our source was able to confirm what we had seen in internal Bohemian Grove documents and annals, that the elite of the elite attend the Grove. Our source personally saw New Mexico Governor Bill Richardson in attendance, Supreme Court Justice Clarence Thomas, the famous newsman Walter Cronkite, and countless other luminaries. Without giving away the identity of our source, we can tell you this. The most elite encampment within the Grove is Mandalay. Other members of the Grove were not even allowed to approach within 100 yards of this compound, swarming with Secret Service, valets, private French cooks, and private security men. In the compartmentalized system of the New World Order, Mandalay is an elite within an elite, at the very top of the pyramid's capstone. Things have changed in the last few years at the all-male encampment. Since its founding in 1872, no females have been allowed in. But under pressure, they've allowed women some jobs in parking cars and in the kitchens in special cloistered areas. Our source is male. We'll call him Kyle. He reported to us that it was a constant irritant inside the Grove, being asked by old men if he, quote, slept around and wanted to have some fun. During one of the festival's revelries, known as Gypsy Jazz, they paused to thank the author of the music. They talk about what a wonderful jazz player he was, but that sometimes he did hang around with women, and the crowd boos with disgust.
He disappeared from time to time, often with women. He thought stealing was fun.
The Grove's own internal annals brag that the Manhattan Project, or the plan to create the A-bomb, was hatched inside this building, known as the Chalet. The Strategic Defense Initiative, better known as Star Wars, was also the brainchild of Grove members and was born inside the Chalet. height of the Cold War, top Soviet dignitaries traveled to the Bohemian Grove for secret meetings with the heads of the U.S. government as well as corporate leaders. Our source worked at the Grove in the summer of 2004 and the summer of 2005, and he was able to obtain 2 program covers for the cremation of care ceremony, as well as a 2005 membership list, which reads like a who's who of U.S. and European elite. Former President Jimmy Carter, former President George Herbert Walker Bush, President Bush, Henry Kissinger, George Shultz. The list goes on and on. This is a video still of the sign at the entrance to the path to the Hillbilly Club where President Bush stays. Look at that happy little devil with his forked tail dancing and smiling and those sharp little teeth. Oh, it's so Christian. But again, President Bush had such a Christian name in Skull and Bones, Magog, or Satan's war leader. The Grove is dominated by Republicans, the supposed party of Christian conservative family values, but the Grove has its share of high-powered Democrats as well. It's also important to note that the Grove itself was founded in 1872 by West Coast journalists, and that the National Press Club adopted the iconography of the Grove for its Great Seal. There are 3 major icons used in the cremation of care ritual. Moloch, the owl idol, the curved staff carried by the high priest, and the eternal flame lamp, the Arabian-style lamp, which the priest uses to ignite his torch, which he then uses to burn the human effigy, care. Here are video stills of the effigy after it has been burned on the altar in the morning. Many researchers of the global elite believe that real sacrifices are going on at the Grove. When I filmed the ceremony in 2000, I saw no evidence of this. It looked like an effigy, and the Druid priests were easily able to pick it up and take it up the steps to the platform. Our inside source informs us that there are actually 4 effigies used in the ceremony. One brought in on the back of the wagon, another that's used behind the trees, another that's brought across by the Grim Reaper to the steps of the idol, and still another effigy that is placed on a black altar before Moloch, the demon god, and burned. And this is the first and only time that video has ever been shot inside of the owl idol. We can now confirm that the owl is metal with a stone facing. Leaning up against a wall is the metal skeletal remains of Care. Care, or the conscience of the group, is symbolized by a human body. All that remains is the metal skeleton. Our source informs us that the final effigy that is burned is made of a highly flammable material, and that the local fire department from Monterrey oversees this part of the ritual. That was an important piece of the puzzle, because in 2003 we traveled back to the Grove and talked to a lot of the locals who were mainly friendly. But when we talked to a couple of local firefighters who were with the Monterrey Fire Department and asked them about the Bohemian Grove, they got very upset and told us to turn our cameras off.
Well, he was telling me about it's like where the president goes and stuff. And so we were going to, like, talk to him, and then he's all over.
And I shut the camera off, huh?
Back in 1959, I became very interested in the world of the occult. as it applies to, or the hidden world as it applies to politics and religion. And the one thing I will say that the past 50 years has given me is, I would say that nothing in this world works the way you think it does. Nothing. Governments do not operate the way you think they do. Banks do not do what you think they do. The police department is not here for what you think it is. Nothing in your world works the way you think it does. There's a far higher, bigger picture going on the earth for at least 7,000 years of human history that we modern day people really just don't relate to. All we know is what we live with today, but never suspecting that the institutions of power, banking, education, the military-industrial complex of the world has taken hundreds of years to develop. And over these last hundreds of years, great governments have come into being. And of course, when you are a slave, and you are considered to be a slave, when you declare yourself to be free, you're going to make some enemies. And you're going to terrorize your masters who thought they owned you. So now you're going to be a terrorist. And they are now able to kill you because you're a terrorist. First of all, obviously, under the Caesars of Rome. And when the Caesars Rome fell at about the 5th century AD, a new power rose in Rome called the Vatican. Well, the Vatican simply took over the position of Caesar of Rome. And so today the papacy or the Pope is still basically Caesar in Rome. And this is why all of the nations of Europe all come to bow down to the Pope in Rome, because he is, in point of fact, Caesar. His official title is Pontifex Maximus. And that was a term that was given to Caesar of Rome. So the point I'm making here is that for years Rome has dominated Europe. And for years Europe has dominated the world. Therefore, there is the old saying that all roads lead to Rome. So when you begin to see the wars and the tragedies and the things that are going on in the world today, the corrupt politics, the lies and the deception and the wars and incredible things which we're seeing, that people are becoming more and more concerned and worried about what's going on the world scene and where are we going as a civilization, especially Europe now and America. Just keep in mind that what you are seeing today, happening on the earth today, with all the wars and economic problems, etc., all has a pedigree, and all has a background which you need to understand. It's called the hidden history of Europe, the hidden history of America, and in point of fact, the hidden history of the world we live in. Because as I said before, so much of our religion, our government, our commercial systems, our educational systems are all based on ancient concepts and belief systems. And unless and until you educate yourself as to how your world operates, you're never really going to experience freedom.